All right, welcome back. So in this video, we're continuing to use and implement the Flash. In the last video, we installed it. We talked a little bit about how it works. We used Connect Flash, the package, to help us here. The idea, again, is that we can send a message through to the next route, to the next request, so that we can then display it to the user. And what we want to do now is, rather than displaying it individually on every template, which I only did one time, but rather than doing this on every single page that we wanted to potentially have an error message or a success message, we're going to move that type of code to the header, which is a natural place for that. So I'm going to open up the header to start. So partials header.ejs. And what we can do is just at the bottom, after the nav bar, we can just add in an h1, and we can add in something like message. We'll keep it the same name. Now the issue is that message will work on our, login form right here, where we're passing in message. But on any other route, message will be undefined, which is going to be problematic, as you can see here. So if I refresh the page, it works fine. But if I try and go to sign up, we have a problem. Message is not defined. And that's because sign up has the same header file and message hasn't been provided. So to fix that, I'm going to get rid of this line right here, or I'm going to cut it out actually, and not pass it to login individually. Then I'm going to go to app.js, and just where we have the same code where we're doing current user, where we pass current user to every single template, we can do the same thing where we can say res.locals.message equals request.flash.error or request.flash error. So if there's anything in the Flash, we'll have access to it in the template under message. So I'll show you that now. If I restart, first time, if I refresh, I shouldn't see anything. If I go to sign up, it now works and there's nothing to be flashed. But if I try and trigger that again, so I go to /campgrounds, I try and add a new one, I get my message, please log in first. So let me show you that it's working on every page though. So let's say when I sign out. So if we go to the logout route, which is in our, I have it open, but I'll just show you again, routes index.js, where the logout happens is right here, request.logout, and then right before we redirect, we could do something like request.flash, and for now I'm keeping it as error because that's what I have set up, and we'll just say logged you out, just like that. Now if I restart, let me sign up here just as anyone. Just do la. Perfect. Sign up. Great. Now if I click on log out, I get logged you out. And if I refresh the page, it goes away. So we have this interface, this way of sending one message to a user, or a message that we want to last basically one request. And that's it, one request/response. And then if the user refreshes or goes somewhere else, we don't want that to persist. And we have that displaying on every page because we have it in the header. So we don't have to manually render a variable and pass a variable through. All we have to do now, anytime we want to show a user some sort of message, before we redirect them, we just add in request.flash. Now, rather than just doing error every time, I showed you in the first video that we would have a green and a red alert basically, so a success and an error. And that's built in with Bootstrap. So if you go to getbootstrap.com, you click on components, and then on the right, the nav bar, you click on alerts. You can see that these are what alerts look like. They're these little messages that have different colors, just like the buttons. The colors are named the same. So there's success, info, warning, and danger. And we'll be using danger. So if there's an error, like you must be logged in to do that, or password is incorrect, we'll have a red alert. And if something good happens, like someone signs up, we want to say congrats. Or if someone logs out, we'll say successfully logged out. Or we could do something like successfully created comment. Whatever we want, we'll use the green one here, which is success. So these are the divs, div class, and let's start with danger. So I'm just going to copy this actually and go to my header file. And rather than displaying an h1, I'm going to display a div, and I'll add message inside of that div. So just like that. So that will just be a stylistic change. So if I refresh the page again, notice that it's there, first of all, and that's because we've just added it. So it doesn't matter if there is no message, if it's empty or not. So we'll fix that. But also notice it goes all the way across the screen, which is not ideal. So let me add some text in to show you what I mean. This isn't a great message to a user. So what we'll do to fix it in the short term, and this actually will be a long-term fix as well, but before we fix the issue of it always being there, even if there is no message, we're going to add in just another container and put our alert in that container. So on the top of every page, if I refresh, I now have a message. It's empty, but if I do something like try and go to add new campground, I get my message, please log in first. And of course, we still have to style this form, so we'll get there, but this at least is looking relatively finished. So that's working just fine, but we still don't have a way to differentiate between green and red, or success and error. And that will be really easy for us to do. So the idea is that, let me get rid of this form, is that when we flash, we could do something like logged you out, and we might want that to be success. So we'll add it in under success. But then we might have something like in our middleware that we already have where we want to flash error, where we want a red danger dialog or a danger alert. So we have these two ways, and we could add anything. We could do info, we could call this blah. This is not related to Bootstrap necessarily. This is just what we're adding it into the flash under. It's the key. But I'm going to keep it as error and success. Then what we need to do is inside of our app.js, where we're passing this data through right here, we'll actually have two different variables. So one for error, and I'll call this res.locals.error, and then we'll have another one for success. Just like that. So now we have two different pieces of data in our template. Both of them will be empty most of the time. Usually there's not something to display, but then if there is an error, inside of the error variable, we'll be able to access that. If we add anything to the flash under success, we'll access it in the success variable inside the template. So now let's go to our template for header and just duplicate this, except rather than alert danger, we'll do alert success, and rather than message that doesn't exist anymore, we'll have error here and success. Those are the two variables we defined. If I refresh right now, we'll have a red and a green stripe, as you can see. And if I try and let's go to /campgrounds and get an error, you can see it only shows up in that red one. And then if I do something like sign up with some gibberish, and then I go to log out, you can see that it shows up in the green section. So what we've done there is just differentiated between two different types of messages. And we could add in as many as we want, so there aren't any rules. If we want to use Bootstrap, though, we want to go with these different classes. But as far as our own classification is concerned, we can put whatever we want. So we could have, if we go back here where we're doing the flash, we could have our own thing that we put here rather than success. But I'm sticking with success and error. Now let's tackle the issue of these two boxes, the alerts always being there even if they're empty. What we'll need to do is go into our header file and add an if statement with our EJS. We'll have if, and let me just add in the brackets to start. And we'll do one for error, just like that, and add in our if statement there, and our closing bracket. And we'll just start with that one. So what we're going to do is check if there is an error. And it actually needs to look like this. So if error and error.length is greater than 0. And the reason for that is just having error exist isn't enough for us to want to display error. So for example, right now, error is empty. There's no text in there. There's no string, but it's not undefined, but it's still showing up here. So what we want to do is check if error.length is greater than 0, because even when error is empty, when there is nothing in there, it's still an empty array. And if we just check if empty array, that's not falsy. Again, I can show you that here. If we did something like this, a lot of stuff there. If empty array console.log anything, if I hit enter, I get that console.log. And that's because an empty array is truthy. So right here, where we're checking if error exists at all, it still could be an empty array, which most of the time it is. So this is really just checking to make sure, like let's say that we didn't have this code at all in our app.js. Where are you? Here we go. If we didn't have this at all, then error and success would be undefined, and that line of code would just prevent an error. But this is actually the more important part, to check if there's anything in the array. So if there's anything in the error array, if the length is greater than 0, then display this. And I'm going to do the exact same thing down here, except rather than error, we'll check inside of success. And we need our closing brace as well. All right, so let's try this up, or fire this up again, restart the server, refresh the page. We don't see anything. Let's try and add a new campground. I get my red message. Please log in first. Let's sign up now. Now if I log out, I get my green message, logged you out. Great. So all we have left really is to now go and add in the correct messages, call the request.flash in the appropriate places.